can you put on the air people who are spouting things that are untrue? Fox apparently, well, let's put it this way: the settlement has Fox not um, objecting to the judge's finding that everything that was said on the air about Dominion and some sort of miscounting of votes or throwing the election, all of that was false. Fox has now accepted that, but Fox has not apologized nor admitted that they knew it at the time because there's an even bigger defamation suit of 2 billion something that's up next. So if they'd admitted anything remotely like that in the Dominion case, the only issue for the next $2 billion case would be damages. So from a legal perspective, that's why there was no apology. From a business perspective, people tune in to listen to what they prefer to hear, and that isn't always the truth. And most people, I think, I shouldn't say most people, but a certain segment look at the news as entertainment. And, if that's the cost of admission, then so called journalists are happy to oblige.
Yeah, I was pretty surprised to see the settlement happen. But now that you mentioned there's another um, situation behind it, what's the other case behind it?
It's the same one from a different company that has these vote counting enterprises. It starts with an S. I'm blanking on the name
Okay.
now, but they're asking for a little bit more. I think it was 2.3 billion.
And so basically that sets the stage for them to settle with this other company. So maybe we'll see a resolution there, or they may refuse to settle and try and push it forward. I mean, we'll see what happens. It seems that um, this issue has, continues to play out. But on the Donald Trump side, former President Trump, he is has he made any statement about this? I haven't heard or seen anything about it.
No, not that I'm aware of. I think he's busy with his own issues and his attacks on Governor DeSantis, which seem to be gaining some traction, especially this business of eating pudding with his fingers, which is funny since Donald Trump famously eats pizza with a knife and
Forward.
fork. So,
Yeah, it's tremendous how quickly things turn, and even George Santos is running for re-election. What do you make of that?
well, why not? If people are dumb enough to send him money, uh, that's on them. You get the representatives you want. It's clear that he made a series of, let's be charitable and call it misstatements or whoppers. And now everybody knows. I mean, I can't imagine any universe in which he gets reelected. But on the other hand, it seems that if people do send him money for whatever reason, he can use that to defend himself in all these investigations that are ongoing against him. And that may just be his play, along with the never complain, never explain defense.
Right now, here's I guess the next question, since we're on the federal side. Clarence Thomas. I mean, all the information that's coming out now about his relationship with a Texas billionaire bankrolling his lifestyle and the non-disclosures. What is that? Is there anything? I don't think there's anything that can be done to a Supreme Court justice. Is there?
Well, not realistically. Of course, he could be impeached and convicted, but that's never happening. They'll never get an impeachment because it's a Republican controlled House. And even if by some miracle they did, you would never get a conviction because you're not going to get enough Republican senators to cross over. They wouldn't do it for Trump. Granted, some of the first case really wasn't impeachable, and the second one, which was the January 6th,
Hmm.
was rushed and, as far as I'm concerned, botched because that one, the way the evidence is coming out, he is tied in some way to that. And ultimately, those are political issues. But the short answer is the Supreme Court, unlike all the other levels of the federal judiciary, do not have any code of ethics that's binding upon them. So, whereas if you're in front of a district court judge or an appellate panel, and one of the judges has some skin in the game, maybe they have an investment in the company that you're suing or something like that, you make a motion for them to recuse themselves, and they do. And a new judge comes in, and that's the end of the matter. The problem with the Supreme Court is it's the final
Stop.
stop.
Yeah.
So there's something called the rule of necessity, and that would only come into play if the entire panel had to recuse themselves. So, for instance, there were a matter of some sort of compensation for the justices that arguably was going to be diminished during their tenure, which you can't do under the Constitution, since they would all stand to benefit from throwing out that law, theoretically, they would all have to recuse themselves, except there's no one to replace them. There's no other Supreme Court justice who would be not compromised who could stand in. So, under this very rarely invoked rule of necessity, the necessity is, well, that no one else can decide this, so we have to, in spite of this clear conflict of interest. That's not what's happening with Clarence Thomas. He's one of nine. And the issue specifically for him is just disclosure. The thing that I found so off putting was not so much that he didn't disclose, because, well, there are many reasons why he's claiming he was told by fellow justices that he shouldn't. But the real reason was there was a documentary where he was pretending that he prefers Walmart parking lot vacations while he was in Indonesia on a $500,000 junket.
Look at that. What happened here with former Mayor Rich Thomas and former Assistant United States Attorney from the Eastern District, Charles Knapp? Don't change that dial. We're going to come back and talk about what happened here.
Because that's what really annoyed me. They had all this choosy music in the background. They had a
Yeah.
video of literally a Walmart parking lot. He's trying to pretend he's a man with a pizza. You know,
It don't work that way.
don't insult my intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, it's I just find it amazing that why now? Do they really think they're going to pressure him to get off the bench? No. Like that's why I'm like,
No, the only thing that they may try to do is increase his blood pressure so he has strokes. But I mean,
yeah, it just seems like if anything, they're trying to make him into an election issue or something. I don't know. They're doing something.
well, I mean, between him and his wife Jenny, but then you have the that's another issue. The Magic Kingdom.
Hmm.
Oh, what are you watching?
Kansas, yeah, I'm watching him. Yeah, so it's like I'm trying to figure out. He's trying his best to get control over them, and it's just kind of like,
Yeah, but this was a deal Florida entered into 50 years ago
yeah,
for economic value, which they got in spades.
yeah.
And now he's taking the whole power of the Florida government to go after Disney because they didn't like the, whatever it was called, don't say
LGBT,
gay,
yeah.
yeah, bill. I don't know that a state can appropriately target a business like that.
Yeah. Yeah, not only that, but it's like, you know, I think he's picking a fight and crossing the bridge too far.
Yeah. Oh, we go. That was quick.
Yeah.
All right.
Welcome back. Welcome back. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon. You listen to What Happened Here, and we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here with a particular situation? Answering the question of, why did something happen or how did something happen? And today we're talking with our special guest and co-host, Charles Knapp, former Assistant United States Attorney from the Eastern District, also former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney's Office, and former City of Mount Vernon Inspector General. He joins us with his sage wisdom and input, and you're welcome to call in and ask questions or challenge some conventions. Phone number is 914-636-0110. Again, that's 914-636-0110. And before we went to break, we're talking about Clarence Thomas, Supreme Court Justice, whether or not he will face any type of justice for his non-disclosure. Meanwhile, we have a situation we touched upon briefly, but I think it's apropos we bring it up. It's DeSantis versus Disney. Like, what's going on there, and how come um, the government of Florida is going after Disney of all companies to go after? So, if you have any thoughts on that, definitely feel free to call in and ask, to ask the question. But my thinking on DeSantis versus Disney is it's truly a bridge too far. I think that this point was made when he tried to, get some form of, I don't even want to call it cooperation, but it just seems like he's trying to use it as a way to get attention, but it seems to be backfiring. What do you think?
Well, once upon a time, the Republican Party was the party of business, and now they're targeting a business. I wonder if a state legislature has the power to target a specific business on what's really a First Amendment issue. Disney, as a corporate entity, which the Supreme Court tells us has the rights of a living, breathing person, gave its opinion on the "Don't Say Gay" bill, and now they're being punished for it by the government. It's an anti-business position because back when Walt Disney struck the deal with Florida, that whole area where Disney World is was a backwater. They developed it, they created the economic engine that is that district. And now, 50 years later, Governor DeSantis wants to dismantle it and take control of it. It almost sounds like something the Chinese Communist Party would do. Once you're really successful, they step in and say, "Thank you very much. We're now in control." They're not going to be running the day-to-day operations, but certainly they're going to be increasing taxes and all sorts of things on Disney to punish Disney, which will then just pass it along to the customers. But that does not seem to be, in the wheelhouse of what used to be the Republican Party. It's a strange inversion, and I really don't know why, other than it seemed like a good idea at the time for Governor DeSantis to pick this fight against one of the biggest employers in Florida. It just doesn't make any sense unless he thinks that any primary is going to have mostly the extremists come out, and this is, red meat for them, and then somehow he's going to have to pivot to the center if he has any hope of winning the general election. I don't see it happening, though.
Yeah, but I know a caller's on the line that has a question that's going to tap in with us. Vince, you're on the line on what happened here.
Thank you.
I was waiting for that.
Hey, Vince, in that group, don't leave me out. I have a right to be as stupid as I want to be, too. with my family this year because of the stupidity of the business operation. I'm not a beer drinker, but I would never drink another Budweiser. Now, if corporations even think to their advantage, business-wise, to involve themselves in the political realm, I realize that. It's just to identify
Refrain.
it. The Nolan works, I get it. But I really think kind of set up with the influencers and the intelligentsia of the world telling me what's good for me. Look, run your business, sell your beer, open your entertainment, and then leave me alone. If you want to step into the world of politics, you might get a governor like DeSantis who says, "Okay, guys, the gloves are off. You want to play in my ballpark now? Yeah, you got the right of free speech, and I got the right to propose legislation." So we'll see how it plays out politically. But for me, I think DeSantis is right on target and trying to corporate America straight. And just by last election, as you may know, the Republican Party, as you alluded to, was seen as the party of big business.
Mm-hmm.
Democratic Party seen as the party of big business. Do you know that that is now yeah. Big business is now the big contributor to the Democrats? 67% of the districts represented by Republicans losing class districts. Here, and I'll continue to start.
Thank you. We're going to pick up and respond to Vince. And Vince, you're welcome to call back in to go back and forth a little bit on what happened here when we come back from break. Don't change that dial.
There you go.
Yeah, that's funny. I love it.
Lot to unpack there.
Yeah. So I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's I think that again, now I'll say this, we'll come back from break, but
Yeah.
Disney employs thousands of people and they bring millions to Florida. They've created that whole industry of airline and vacation. I mean, they created it. So again, I'm not clear on what he is seeking to get accomplished other than get attention. I don't know what kind of accountability he's going to bring on their content creation. It just don't seem like
Oh, their content creation zero. This
yeah,
is just, they.
Gerald. Mitch was calling it. Okay, all right. Mitch was next. All right. So it's like
But here's the joke. Originally, Disney didn't take a position, and they had a little revolt of the
their
employees,
employees.
and
Yeah.
then they figured, well, we'll tamp that down. We'll just say, yeah, fine, we're against this bill,
Yep. Yep. And
and
the
then they
next thing you
stepped into
know,
a buzzsaw. Well,
yep.
the government can't retaliate like that. That's sure they can pass legislation, but you can't do it in retaliation for someone expressing their First Amendment rights.
Right. Right.
That's the issue.
That is, and it's clear that that's not going to change. He's
And
going to keep.
I do drink beer, and I wouldn't drink Bud.
That
I
is,
support local industry.
man, I'm telling you, that is so. I can't believe that marketing director made the decision to do that in a vacuum and didn't get it fully approved. And the only reason why I say this is like
Oh, you mean
she,
the Bud thing?
yeah, she has the ability to advocate for a brand new brand of beer. Just she could have did that, and I'm not trying to defend anything other than the brand of Bud. When
Yeah.
you think of Bud, you think
Five shares.
yeah. So, but she look, they $6 billion gone in value because of that one move.
Yeah, well, you know what? Now's the time to buy whatever Anheuser-Busch is. Because it's coming back.
Yep, that's probably
I mean,
smart.
Coke came back from what was it, New Coke?
Yeah,
Budweiser can come back from this stuff.
they're gonna have a hard hill to climb though.
Yeah, well, you buy low. I'm still there.
Yeah. I think that,
And I
like you
think
said,
they're owned by some major international brand anyways.
yeah, out of Europe. The next attack on them is going. They're not even American beer. It's funny. Here you go.
But with all the mergers, I think they were bought out by a big Belgian
InBev or
company.
something like that.
Yeah.
What
Belgium.
happened here? With Rich, mayor of Mount Vernon on 1460 WVOX.
Can we answer Vince before we get to Mitch?
Huh?
Can we answer Vince
Yeah.
before? Okay.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. You're listening to What Happened Here on 1460 on your AM dial, worldwide at WVOX.com. And, we're here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here with a particular situation, question, or, issue that we're passionate about. Before we went to break, we had a great call from caller Vince, who laid out the case for DeSantis versus Disney and why DeSantis was, taking the high ground and Disney needs to be put in check, like the rest of corporate America, as Vince pointed out. If you want to call in and weigh in with a topic or a question or an issue, the phone number is 914-636-0110. I know we have another caller on the line, but before we get to that caller, Mitch, thanks for hanging on. We're going to give some feedback on Vince's observations. Charlie, what do you say?
What I think is that, uh, well, let's start with a little background. So when the bill came out in Florida, and parts of the bill, by the way, I agree with because for the same reason, you can't teach 6-year-olds all the intricacies of algorithms. You can't teach 6-year-olds all the nuances of history. You can't teach 6-year-olds all about gender and things like that. They're just too young. That's just the fact of the matter. So there should be some common sense involved in that. And the bill does provide that. There's certain areas where arguably it goes over the edge, but that's up to the legislature. That's not up to the individual. That said, Disney's original reaction to the bill was no reaction. That led to a small revolt of its employees. And I suspect, as with everything else, they thought they were taking the path of least resistance by throwing them a bone, coming out publicly against the bill, and they figured that would be that. Uh, Governor DeSantis obviously can talk back about it, but where I draw the line is using the power of the government to retaliate against a corporation or a person for their legitimate exercise of their First Amendment rights. So I think that's where we part company. Uh, I'm not a big supporter of Disney one way or the other. They were way more important when I was a kid. They are now. But I don't, again, it's up to Vince, but I would have taken that vacation because you go for the weather, you go for the fun. You don't go for the politics. Should corporations get involved in politics? Well, they do. The ones who say that for religious reasons they will not fund certain pharmaceuticals or certain procedures, that's a political position, even though you're arguing that it's a religious rights position, but it's political. So let's not, fool ourselves about that. Everyone has a right and you can react as you want. You can not go to Disney. That's fine.
You can go to Gatorland. You can go to
Universal,
Universal. Yep, there
yeah.
you go.
Harry Potter, whichever you want. Anyway, that's my
So
little spiel.
my add to that is Vince, take me with you. Like I'll go in your place to Disney. I think I don't have to. It doesn't have to be Disney. It could just be go hang out in Orlando for a little bit and just catch the weather and hang out at Gatorland. Oh man, but no, Mitch, thanks for the input. It's gonna be interesting to see Disney versus DeSantis continue to play out. And I just know that I think It's a big fight, and it's going to keep fighting. And on the line we have Mitch. Mitch, thanks for calling in on what happened here.
Yeah. And as part of a business man, I got this. I'm kind of surprised that Middledown has made Governor Ron DeSantis look goofy. Over it again. I mean, the testimony is it's going to go into a fight. You know, you prepare to win because my friend, you and me, they have made, they have helped maneuver and made him look so foolish that this might be the thing that destroys his presidential run that doesn't seem to exist. And Father Sabria, he's a big Trump fan. I got to respect. I'm more of a Trump type of tendency here. And you please, please, don't take the wrong. That's it. It only goes wrong. And this is their deal. Because they're not supporting Democrats, they're supporting you guys. So, God bless you, do the Democrats work. I don't know what, and I just say one last thing.
Sure.
The, the big deal is now the big lie. And the big liar on TV is Big Man himself, Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
All I'm going to say.
All right.
Well, we taking it. We take.
Don't go first if you're a Democrat. Take care.
All right,
Thank
you
you.
got it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, yeah, Charlie.
Yeah, the only thing I want to say is that there's so many important things that politics can take care of and possibly, or at least move towards addressing, if not altogether fixing. I think that something like 70% of the issues Americans mostly agree on. There's not that much daylight between them. And yet we have politicians like DeSantis and Trump and a lot of others who focus on, what they call the culture wars. That, first of all, you're not going to convince someone who believes wholeheartedly one thing that they're wrong, because they're going to figure out a way to show that you're wrong and you're attacking them, and everybody becomes a victim and you wind up getting nowhere. Politicians should stop wasting their time on that sort of base and crass appeal to people's emotions and take a page maybe out of FDR, Lyndon Johnson, Martin Luther King Jr., and give the Americans a vision that we can all look up to, that will help the vast, vast majority of us address the problems, our economy, infrastructure, education, you name it, it's out there. Defense, policing, if you want, inner city, city versus suburb, urban versus rural. All those things need to be addressed. And, if you want to call it climate change, if you just want to call it, reining in pollution, either way, all these things are way more important than what beer you're drinking and what some corporation has to say on some soft social issue, frankly. So that's my frustration.
Well, we have another caller that has a bone to pick, and is going to ask what happened here. Chris, you're on the line. Thanks for joining.
I also covered this as, the private profit making company. Okay, that Donald Trump's big lie. Okay, they put it on the market, and that's the way they made profit. They made profit by selling this lie. So they have a liability because it's not like someone standing on a platform saying what they want to say. Right? this is you're on a media platform, okay, and they're selling what they actually are doing is was selling a big lie, and they are now paying the price for the lie that they were selling. It's pretty simple.
Well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, they settled, but in terms of their role in trying to sell a story and a narrative, I think that and this is part of the reason where they lost, their journalistic integrity when it came to reporting that story at a minimum. But in terms of, the whole sequence, I think that, it was important that they were held to account because often, media is not held to account to address some of their biggest errors. So I think that this settlement is a landmark accomplishment on behalf of Dominion, but the other one is still out there, and let's see where that goes.
Yeah, and the only thing that no one's talked about, and I do not have any information one way or the other, but generally, you're covered by insurance. So I would like to know uh, if Fox's insurance covered the defamation.
I doubt it.
Well, sometimes in the policies it is
Yeah.
covered, and if so, how much of the $787.5 million gets paid by insurance as opposed to the corporation? Of course, if insurance is involved, that just means premiums go up next year for Fox. But it's at the end of the day, it's a business expense for them. Uh,
Price one is part of the pricing.
Yeah, yeah, and it's unfortunate, but I do think it served an important point in illuminating what happened. The problem is that the Fox viewership was effectively shielded from most of this stuff, so they don't know.
Oh,
But
well,
it also caused harm, damage. So this is a damage civil suit, okay?
well, we're going to talk about the damages. If you can hang on, Chris, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back on what happened here. We'll be away. So yeah, we're going to definitely let Chris
Yeah.
finish his point, and then I want to just touch upon briefly. I can do it right now on Instagram. Um, okay, that's this one. It's making sure because it's kind of loud. But yeah. So Memorial Field, Calatenis. That decision came back against Mount Vernon, 5-4, if I'm not mistaken, from the jury. It was a split jury. And what people have to remember, and David, this is one of the things that people I want to put in sequences. All the information that is available to the public did not reach the jury. So, for example, when it came to explaining the environmental issues at Memorial Field, much of that was withheld from the jury. Um, when it came to the agreement with the county of Westchester and how the county had to authorize Keller's contract and they did not authorize that contract, that was withheld. So there are a lot of different nuances and points within the case that were just it didn't get in. And when you have critical evidence that caused the city to act basically excluded, all you're left with is, did the city build a clubhouse for Keller or not? And then when you look at that in isolation, you say, oh, no, they didn't, therefore they win. That's kind of the situation that was created in court. And the clubhouse that was built, it started to get built by former Mayor Davis. It was in complete disarray. It didn't have a sewer connection. It didn't have drainage. It had nothing. And we did a report on it explaining the problems to try and get funding for the city council and the controller to move monies over to, finish making the space A, safe, B, completed. But every step we took to address the issues at Memorial Field, the funding was blocked. And that's very well documented in the media and the press. The city council and controller blocked all funding. So when the environmental regulators came forward and said, hey, you have to clean up this mess, and we worked to do that, we were again blocked, not just by the council and the controller, but by the tennis facility. So the city took every step to enforce its rights under its contract, and the issues that need to be appealed will be appealed. And I hope that's a quick enough summary of what happened and why we're here. But I'll talk more about it at another time. I'll do a full video on it. Here we go.
Almost.
We're back almost. Here we go.
Cue the music.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back. You're listening to What Happened here on 1460 on your on your AM dial on worldwide at WVOX.com. My name is Rich Thomas, former mayor of Mount Vernon, and I'm here every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 p.m. asking the question, what happened here? Today, our special guest and co-host is Charles Knapp, former Assistant United States Attorney for the Eastern District, former Assistant Manhattan District Attorney, as well as former Inspector General of Mount Vernon. And he joined us to talk about, some national issues and some local issues. But from the national standpoint, we had a call on the line before we went to break. Chris, are you still there? You were talking about damages.
Final point.
Hmm. I mean, they definitely, you know, put the information out there, and the question is, how's it all going to play out? You got that special grand jury going on about January 6th in the background with the former Hague prosecutor leading that charge. So, yeah, this could get interesting.
Yeah, I think that on that point, Chris, you have to remember criminal liability, if you do it as a sort of ballpark percentage, you have to prove 95% or more, so to speak, that their intent was to cause harm. Frankly, let's put it this way. I think on the criminal side, they'd be more guilty of something negligent because all they cared about was it seems to me. All they cared about was their viewer share and how many eyeballs and clicks and stuff like that they could get on their systems. And they really didn't care about the truth of anything. That's the political process. It'll sort itself out. Pick your excuse or rationalization. As I said, any other normal network would have been over the moon that they paid millions of dollars for a system that could call elections correctly and faster. And that's exactly what happened in Arizona. And instead, they fired some of those people. That's not really journalism. But again, it's up to the viewers to demand more. And it seems that the reaction to that was that they demanded less and they went off to some other networks even farther to the right. So, some people just can't be reasoned with. But I take your point on potential criminal liability. I think it's an incredibly tough road to hoe, but we'll see. Well, undermining.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, but the issue here, I think no, frankly, but the issue with one January 6th is impeding government process, which is a different crime. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you for calling in. And I don't know if we have any more callers, but you're welcome to call in. Phone number is 914-636-0110. And we're down to our final segment, our final part of the show. And we touch upon a lot from, Clarence Thomas, the Fox Dominion suit, Disney and DeSantis. That was a surprise one. But we also have the situation with the wrong door, wrong driveway teenagers both being shot and killed, or at least the unfortunately the young lady from up in Washington County, New York, she died. The young man that went to the wrong door to pick up his brothers, his siblings, he's still hanging on. So it seems like he's going to be recovering. But man, talk about guns and how this situation is just literally out of control. What's going on with A, these guns, and B, why are people so afraid of someone either driving in their driveway or knocking at their door?
Well, first of all, I wish I think it's Ralph Yarl, the kid who was
Yep.
shot in the head. I
Speedy recovery.
Yeah, but I mean, you're shot in the head. You don't really recover from that kind of trauma anytime soon. I mean, it's going to be a long road for him, and there are all sorts of issues at play with respect to guns. I mean, I have my own uh, pet view on this, and it really comes down to this. If you interpret the Second Amendment as the Supreme Court has at the moment, that you have a right to self defense. And if you take it to the logical extreme, the Second Amendment is there to, if you listen to some people, to prevent tyranny, which means your own government coming against you.
Mhm.
And if you take on the fact that back in the day, 18th century, there was this thing called the militia, which was a volunteer group separate from any state controlled militia, but the volunteers could be called up to defend because there was no standing army, and we all know the history of that. I think any gun owner should be made a member of the state militia, and even though there is no such thing, but you get a little certificate when you get your gun. And before you actually get your gun, you have to take a rigorous training course and undergo psychological evaluation. Then you get your gun. Then every year, you have to have more training because it is a dangerous weapon. And it's no different than a boat or something like that. You just need to re-up on it. I mean, lawyers have to take continuing legal education, doctors have to take the equivalent for them, accountants have to take the equivalent exams for that, et cetera, et cetera. No reason that a possessor of a deadly weapon shouldn't have to jump through one or two hoops to maintain proficiency, to understand the latest in safety rights and the latest in the law. And you at no point were people who were had psychiatric diagnoses allowed to have guns. I mean, the local communities knew who these people were because they were smaller. But I think that some form of regulation like that would satisfy the Second Amendment as it's currently understood by the Supreme Court, because that creates all sorts of problems. It's a little bit of an exaggeration to say if the regulation didn't exist in 1791 or 1865 or something like that, then it can't exist in the 21st century. That's insane, but I think you can still work around that as a logical matter. And but the issue of 84-year-old men shooting through a door when someone either knocks or maybe is turning the doorknob. I mean, that's just not right. That person should not have a gun, period. And the same thing holds with the fellow who now surrendered himself, who shot the Mr. Yarl in the head, and then for good measure came out and shot him a second time. That's not self-defense. When someone's incapacitated, that's it.
Yeah.
He doesn't represent a danger. And it's possible that the guy didn't even know the law. He just acted out of fear. But if you're acting out of fear, that means you should not own a gun because you need discipline and self control. Those are, I think, every gun owner understands that. Certainly, hunters who take their hunting seriously understand that. It's not TV. You don't just shoot wildly because the bushes are moving or something like that. So, we have guns in the country. That's a fact. We have regulations that are weak. That's a
Hmm.
fact. And we have people who shouldn't, frankly, be owning guns. And I'm not even talking about criminals who should just not have guns, period. But it's a problem and it's a national problem. And it needs to be addressed. And if Governor DeSantis could take his nose out of Disney's business for a little bit. Maybe he could propose something, and then he would be the hero instead of uh, what was it? Goofy.
Yeah, instead of being goofy, I was gonna say he could take his fingers out their pudding, but that's a
Yeah,
different story.
right. But it's a problem, and it's terribly sad, and people are losing their lives every day for something that needs to be addressed. And again, there's another large group of guns for suicides that obviously needs to be addressed also.
Yeah, look, I think when I reflect on the other side of the spectrum, you have people that own guns that went through a process and they have the training and the discipline to be a responsible gun owner. I think that's a good thing. I think more of that should happen. The same way I believe that home economics should be reintroduced into the schools to teach kids, you know, basic life skills. Because with the situation with social media, the internet, technology, most kids are preferring an online experience versus coming outside and engaging people in the real world. And that's something that needs to be addressed so that kids are prepared both offline, but also some digital economics so that kids understand that the virtual world that they're in, there are consequences there as well. But when it comes to, just safety and guns, illegal guns definitely need to stop access to them, but more importantly, we got to keep context as to what is going on in these communities that's driving some of these people to try and get one, and whatever we could do to create more jobs and stop people from picking up a weapon and hopefully help them pick up a sport or some other positive productive activity. We need to do that. But that's our show for today. I know we covered a lot, but looking forward to coming back next week, and also maybe some overtime online. We'll talk to you guys again. Thank you, Charlie, for joining for What Happened Here.
Overtime, like Bill Maher.
Yeah, like Bill Maher. I can't call it overtime. I can call it extra time.
Right.
But thank you everybody.
Or added time, like Premier League soccer.
Yeah, the penalty time.
Yeah.
All right, guys, y'all take care. I'll see y'all later on. Oop. And I'm gonna say goodbye to you over here too.